Coming up on Unpacked.
What makes a black person black?
So what do you identify as?
I don't have to belong anywhere. This is who I am.
How a person identifies is more important than how we box them based on how they look.
I also like to believe that I am biracial.
Today, we have a very different kind of conversation, again, about race. We've got two guests in studio, and they are here to unpack. Botswana-born multi-award-winning television actress Petronella Tshuma and Durban-born reality TV star Graig Khumalo have both had to navigate the complexities of life growing up the products of parents of different races in apartheid South Africa. Petronella Tshuma was born to a Xhosa father and coloured mother. She has lived in Botswana, South Africa, and the UK. Graig Khumalo was born in Addington in Durban to a black mother and a white father. His family roots come from KwaXhabisa in northern KZN. Now these are their stories. Let's unpack. Welcome to the show, Petronella. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And to yourself, Graig, welcome. Thank you for coming through.
Yeah, well, thanks for the invite.
So there's this term that we use as South Africans called coloured, right? Do you resonate with that term at all?
Not at all.
And why not?
Because I'm not coloured.
And for yourself, Graig?
To some extent, I resonate with it.
So
Yeah.
the reason I'm starting with that question is because a person might just see you and say, oh, you're coloured, but that it has its own historical everything. So what do you identify as?
Black.
You identify as black.
Yes, I'm a black woman.
And what do you identify as?
Black man.
You're a black man. How?
Yeah, what's this?
How? But technically, when a
Yes.
black person says, Omo ing,
Yeah.
what are you? As in, which is quite an invasive question to be asking somebody you don't know, but for the purposes of us having this conversation, are you biracial?
I'd like to think I am.
Okay.
Yes.
And what does that mean to you?
It just means growing up, giving birth by two different people. My mom, my Khumalo, she's black. Nyama, as in everything. Because there's all Khumalo as well with different hair,
Yes.
like myself. So my dad is a white person. So I'd like to think anyone coming together and mixing up, we can say that person's biracial. And yeah, I also like to believe that I am biracial because of that. But and how I grew up and what I believe in and how I feel, I'm black. Yeah, well,
And I'm so glad you specify that because sometimes people will say being black is a feeling, that you don't, being black doesn't mean both your parents are black necessarily, because we know it's such an American thing that when a person has a black parent and a white parent, you're automatically black African American. So that's why we get to celebrate Halle Berry's one of our own, or Tiger Woods. It doesn't matter that you're half. Even though we know Alicia Keys has a white mother, she's black, right? But in South Africa, there's more boxes. What do you think about that in regards to yourself?
I mean, for me, my story is that my father is a black man. He is Xhosa Malawian. My mother is, in all intents and purposes, when you look at her, she looks coloured, right? My mom is Tswana Irish. And so I am Tswana Irish, Xhosa Malawian, with that mixture, right? And for me, I grew up with my father's side of the family. I'm the first one to look mixed and all of that. So, you know, for me, the way I've been brought up is I've never known, I don't know when the first time I thought, yo, actually, I look different.
Yes.
I don't remember the very first moment because I was just upeti, kulendlini, nomndeni wami, and that's it. And that's why I think I've always had this question, Relebogile, what makes a black person black, right? And yes, the color of our skin, melanin and all of this, a whole lot of stuff. But for me, it's always been a feeling. I may look so different. I may take like the white side of my grandfather so strong with the hair or the nose or the whatnot. But my blacks, it's so strong. Like I feel it in the depths of my being that I am a black woman and nothing can change that. And I don't identify as biracial. Never
Would
have.
you say then, because bi automatically assumes two, would
Yeah.
you say then maybe you're not biracial, but you
Yes.
definitely are a mix of races
Yes.
on a certain level, which maybe even every human being can claim they are?
True. I still identify as Black. Yes.
I don't think they have to be two separate things. Like in the same way that you are saying, I'm Black, but I also consider myself biracial. I think it can be
Definitely.
it can be both.
Definitely.
Especially because we live in a country where race is a political tool.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
Most definitely.
So from your side, you mentioned that dad is Malawian Xhosa, mom is Irish Tswana. Tswana, yeah, South Africa or yeah,
Botswana.
Botswana.
Botswana, Francistown, where I was born.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you grew up in Botswana.
Yes, I was born in Botswana.
You mentioned that you don't recall when you noticed you look different.
Yeah.
Every time I've had these conversations with guests
Yeah.
who don't look like everybody around
Yeah.
them, usually the first time they notice is when someone tells them. Do you remember that happening to yourself?
All the time. Okay, even though like I mentioned the Xhosa, the Malawian, the Tswana, the Irish, right? My family is actually beyond mixed because then because of exile
Yes.
and where they grew up. You must understand the Tshuma side then had to go settle in Zimbabwe, where you'll find I've got a family that speaks Ndebele or Shona and all of that, right? So I know with but in Ndebele bazoti ikia, something like that, or bazoti in the Shona accent karat, like colored. And then there was this one a lot was Busman and all of that.
Which many people of the colored community consider derogatory because of how it's used, not to
Yeah.
make less of
Yes,
the khoisan
exactly.
and all of that. But yes, I
but
get what
how
you're
it's
saying.
exactly how
Yes.
it's used and mazadai colored, yeah, colored, all of these things. And I was just like, because I look like this, I was the first one to look like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean and stuff. So, but it never made me feel anything.
Yes.
That I recall. It was just like, and I would be growing up at school, and then as soon as I spoke Vernac, everyone was like, huh? It was always like a shock, and I'd be like, but what's shocking?
Yes, yes.
So that was my experience. It's actually the people around us that make us notice because kids are innocent. We don't see color. We don't see any of these things until it is put into our minds.
Tell me then about what your upbringing was like. What was the world you were in? Because you say you were born in Francistown.
So I grew up in Francistown. Grew up in Francistown with my father's side of the family. But before I was born, right, I've heard so many stories that I feel like I didn't want to go into and put blame on anything. You just take what it is and you just forgive, right?
Yeah.
So my grandfather, my mother's father, who is now the Irish side, I was born in 1990. So now for a Black man to impregnate a colored or mixed race woman is like,
With a white father.
with a white father is not acceptable.
Yes.
And so I've heard the stories that like my grandfather chased my father with a shotgun and wanted to kill him because how dare you? And my mother is the firstborn. So now guess what? All his kids, 13 of them, met Black partners. But my mother was the one opening the gate to all of this. I've heard crazy stories, like my mom being thrown down the stairs when she was pregnant with me, like so many things. So the race thing, was not acceptable from my mother's side, my grandfather, because my mother's mom loved me. He was the only one with the issue. My father's side, they were accepting. They were not accepting because my parents were 19 when they both had me, but they never saw race. To them, the Black side race was not the problem. Your age was the problem. You're young, what are you doing this,
I got you. So did mom's dad reject you because your father...
Mom's dad, yes.
Yes, because your father was Black.
Yes.
Or did he only just reject your mom? Because sometimes you have the people who are like, I reject this, it's wrong. Yes, I'm going to chase this man down with a gun. Yes, I'm going to do this. But when the child is here, we're all happy.
No.
It was not that at all. Wow.
I have such a good memory of so many things, Yeah, my memory is sharp. Like, I probably remember things from 3-4 years old. And, the problem is, children, or maybe the beautiful thing with kids. Kids, when you get kids that are sexually assaulted and all of that, kids don't know how to... they don't know how to articulate their feelings and all of that. I think kids just know how to feel. Let me explain what I'm trying to say is, my grandfather hated me. He may have not said it with his mouth that I hate you, but I felt it. The not wanting of me. But when I'd go to their house, to their farm, and literally he despised me. And my grandmother, his wife, then there was love. Children are attracted to hearts, humans' hearts, and aura and all of that. And so now from him, it was a complete, right? So I remember that growing up.
Did that make you feel rejected?
I don't know how I articulated it to myself. I probably just looked up to him and I was like, he doesn't like me, you know? And that was it. Oh, Granny likes me, you know what I mean? And I was just quiet. I was a quiet child. I was an observer and all of that. So yeah, but on the other side, where I grew up now, my dad's side, my grandmother, who raised me actually, and her husband, my grandfather, I actually called them mom and dad. It was love. So my family I never felt good. Loyang zonda, loyang tanda. It was all love from the father's side. Yeah.
Did you not feel at all rejected by your mother indirectly? Because there wasn't that same type of warmth and love on her side of the family?
I don't feel like I was rejected as such by my mom. So my dad went to England when I was 2 years old, right? My dad had to move to England when I was 2 to go like I said, he was young when he had me. So he had to go pursue his career, which was being a chef. So my dad's a chef. My mom stayed in Botswana, you know. It was all these things. Like I'm saying, you hear all these stories that the colored side of my family was so incapable of raising me and looking after me because of things that were happening. My mom was irresponsible or things like that, right? They were crazy. Like I hear so many stories, you know? Hence why I had to be taken away from them. And I had to be raised by my father's side. And my mother actually hated the fact that I was named Petronella Nonsigelelo. I was named by my father's mother, who was Mxhosa. My mother named me Lynette. And my grandmother was like, Lynette. So till this day, like if I straighten my hair, like my mixes, we'll get into my mixes, be like, I look like a Lynette now. And then it's like, you know, and it's like all these things. So yeah, I hear so many stories. So I hear, like, this is what I'm trying to say. I don't want to put blame on anyone. I heard my mom dumped me by the gate and then she was like, she can't do this, she can't raise me. I was taken away. You hear so many things, but all I know is I was raised by Ukoko, whom I called Mommy. And if anything, it was such a blessing in disguise because I am who I am. I always say this, I am who I am because of her.
And the beauty is being raised with love. It doesn't have a race. It doesn't have a color. Obviously, while we're having this discussion, we're discussing certain dynamics that fit into the bigger puzzle of your life and your history and personal experience. But for you to be able to sit here and say, I was raised on love, I think is beautiful. To come out of that it's not, I was raised on survival in the midst of racial confusion.
Never.
That's a different conversation.
Yes.
From your side, Graig, what was growing up like?
For me, growing up was very beautiful. I'd like to paint it like that. So I was born in 1989 in Addington Hospital. So that was I'd say a private hospital back then. It's in Durban. My mom comes from Gohlabisa. Gohlabisa is the northern side of KZN. It's next to Nongoma. So she had moved to the city probably years before, you know. So around 89, she had me with my dad. My dad was the white guy, of course, who comes in the country with all these things that they brought anyway. So yeah, my dad was an engineer who worked for Cecil, and I guess they met, and then I was conceived. But I think throughout conceiving me, she had to find better spaces where she could conceive me. Because in hospitals, it
You mean deliver you, not
Yes.
conceive you.
Oh, my
yes,
bad.
I got you.
Yeah.
You took some conceiving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was born in Addington, and yeah, I only got to really realize it was actually privileged for her to go through everything that she had to. Because at one point, she tried to change her names from Usbongile to another name so she could give birth to this white hospital, you know. That was quite beautiful. And yeah, we grew up in the city. I lived in Kenville. I also lived in Merebank in Wentworth.
What was the family structure at home at this time? Were both your parents still together, or mom was doing it on her own?
I'd like to think my mom was doing it on her own
Yeah.
because we'd move so much. And
Yeah.
I only have a blur picture of my dad.
Yeah.
Because he would just come in now and again and it'd be just like where Gali went, you know. That's why I feel you know, but I didn't see it like that. It was just like every time until I got to grow out of it, like, okay, that was my dad.
So you did not know?
I had known, but I was too young to even understand. This is him, because we lived in these olden day buildings, flats. I'm flats where you have like everyone was so busy, and I knew that was my dad, but it wasn't so frequent enough for me to spend time with him, because every time they would be together, Galiwa or there's just that. So growing up, this was around 94, 5. Living in Kenville. So my dad would come in and out, yabo. And Kenville at that time had the whites, the Jews, the Indians. So for me, it would be like, everyone, you know. And after growing up, growing from there, my mom had to move to Lamontville. Lamontville is in Durban. So again, she was just trying to provide a better life for myself and my sisters, I guess. But what I remember quite vividly was my dad, you know, coming in at certain spaces. So he could visit quite easily. He visited while we lived in Kenville, which is more like the north, you know?
Yes, yes.
And we went to Lamont, it's like Elokshini. So from there, I think our connection had died out a bit between me and seeing that guy again, you know?
Because he couldn't visit or because he wouldn't visit?
I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
I'd be lying, having the manga. He couldn't visit or, you know. But I'd like to think the dynamics of the community at that time wouldn't allow a white man to just rock up Elokshini or Boninganyamla, you know. So that's what I'd like to think. And yeah, we had to just, she had to move around so she could provide a better education, because the schools that I had went to was a multiracial school, you know. And I think my mom tried to maintain their life, even though, like, it's shubile, but she maintained, which as in, I want to make sure my kids go to great schools, you know. And through the transition of moving from, you know, a great upper north place to Elokshini, I think that's where a lot started happening in my life, you know, where you just start feeling certain things a bit more,
So I'm assuming that when you're up in the north, in, you know, the upper echelons of society,
Yes.
mingling with other races that are not black, people might not necessarily have questioned where you're from and that kind of thing. Whereas now, Okokasi, people now are like, what are you? Because you don't look like the rest of us. What did those questions sound like?
That's very true. Very, very true. So the questions I'd come across, must say, Sfiga Elamonti, I joined a swimming pool called LYS, Lamontville Young Swimmers. So I was just the only colored kid, Okay, so I'm a speed or coach ready, and you know, you'd get that. Oh, why is your face red now? Oh, se kwatile. Oh, okay. You know, because I don't know if you're light skinned, you're more likely to, like, your face is suddenly red and, why is your face red? Like, nkwatile, Joe, like, you know? So I think those are the type of questions. And Nana would see, you'd find a lot of Elokshini as much as, baba tebengekho, but there would be a sense of a community, yabo. Aunt was next door, uyakwazi ukubhekela ingane yakamakhelwane. There's a sense of that. But when you are mixed, I felt a sense of, like, okay, you're going with that kid. Or it's not necessarily a question on you specifically, but it's just what you're affiliated with. And I think for me as well, Kangagwami was a way of surviving as well. Because you're just like, damn, why vele wonke umuntu ebheka indaba zami, why vele, you know. And then I think from there I had known ukuthi yazini engathi my setup is quite different from wonke umuntu yabo. Yeah, makushisa ngifuna ukuhamba ngeenyawo. But ohamba ngeenyawo is like, hey, ubheke ungathi uthanda ukuba umlungu lo, hamba ngeenyawo, you know. And you're just being a kid. It's not really like anything big, but everything's gonna be brought back, you know. It was a very perplexing way of understanding or identifying myself at that time. Yeah, at that time, I remember World Cup, Bafana Bafana. I forgot what year was it. I was young. Yeah, but it was quite difficult to understand certain things, yabo. Especially, I mean, Lokshini, because when we had moved to Lamonti, my mom had it was a cottage of someone's house that we had stayed in. And because she had to work so we could maintain going to the school we had gone to, despite us moving. So yeah, that did bring a lot of understanding of, oh shit, angifana wonke umuntu, or you know. Yeah, but it did not harm anything, because abo aunt, abo gogo, they just show you love. You're just a kid, you know.
And it's interesting, the juxtaposition between your stories, even though, you know, you were on mom's side. I mean, I'm assuming you don't have any recollection of dad's family.
No, I do not. But I know it's Wakona as a Madluz, you know.
Yes.
Where I do feel connected. It's, why am I drawn into, like, for example, I'm drawn so much into the ocean.
Yes.
And I realize it's, ekhaya go Khumalo, mama, amanzi bayasaba ulwandle. It's like, hey, we have a beach, we have,
I love that. I love
unless
that.
we are papatis or something, you know, it's like,
yeah.
hey, we have a beach, Pumala. And I'm just always like, hey, guys, you know. So I also feel there's also a part of me that it's taken time to accept it's as much as I was a matlozako, agabobwako, but they're part of you. They're also in your bones at a certain,
Petronella, I'm going to come back to you. Do you ever feel a sense of otherness? Anywhere you are? Be it you're in an environment where you're surrounded by a lot of Black people, people you consider your own, but they're not family, where you are made to feel like you're an outsider or an other?
Well, for me, okay, growing up, because I then moved to England when I was 11 years old.
Yeah.
Now I went to go live with my dad, who had left me when I was 2, so I hadn't seen him in 10 years. So now, automatically, I'm in high school, I'm in a foreign land.
Yes.
And I'm like, you're taking a girl who grew up in Hillbrow, still lives in Yeovil.
Yes.
In 2001, and now I'm being thrown into this, like, I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
I was always asked growing up, like, what are you? You know, like, what are you? And I used to be like, what am I? You know? And I'd have to be like, what am I? Because I literally had this long black hair, unibrow engaga. I sounded obviously not like them. And I had, you know, all these issues. And obviously growing up, I had body dysmorphia, like hated being skinny. I hated the way that I looked. Like, what am I? Am I Ethiopian, Somalian? Am I Indian? Like, you know, they'll be like, you look like, they'll be like, where are you from? I'm like, oh, I'm from South Africa, I'm from, you know? They'll be like, no, man, are you not from the Mediterranean somewhere? Like, you know, if my hair's straight, my hair's curly, like, I was always like, who am I? And now, is it called adolescent?
The
teenage years, yeah. So now it's like, I'm going through that.
Yeah.
Things are happening in my body. So literally the 7 years I spent in England were my worst, because I'm like, yo.
Because people need to place you somewhere for them to decide. This is how I view it. People need to place you somewhere so they can decide how to treat you and how to respect you. You know, so they're like, you're one of us. Okay. Okay.
Because I didn't look like the mixed race kids, right? Because I think England has a lot, or maybe the highest percentage of mixed race kids and people, if I'm not mistaken. So I didn't also look mixed race, but then it's like I was mixed with something. Like, what is going on? You know, I didn't look like black, the typical black and white. Whereas, because my dad has a lot of kids, you see.
Yes.
So now I have siblings who have gold hair and green eyes.
Yes.
You know, two of my brother and my sister. My other sister was also in England. Looks, you can tell, okay, she's mixed race.
Yes.
She's black and white. Then what does Upeti look like?
Yes.
What do I, like,
Yes.
you know, where do I fit? Then I came back and then, I'm sorry, I forgot your question, but I'll just carry on.
No, it's okay. Just mainly the essence of, have you ever made to feel like an other? But I think you've answered it with what you were sharing, just in the sense that people needed to place you somewhere. They didn't know where to place you, but you were at a stage in your life where you're still trying to figure out who you are.
Can I just, one last thing to that?
Yeah.
True, right? And I feel like once I was able to put away, like who am I and trying to fit in, I finally found it within myself, which I don't have to belong anywhere. This is who I am.
Yes.
This is who I resonate with.
Yes.
And now it's like, it's not a question of like, this is who I am,
Yes.
proudly a Black African woman.
Yes. From your side, ever felt a sense of otherness?
I think I have. So when my mom was going through life,
Yeah.
where she couldn't afford now. It was me and my sister. We have to live a certain life. She was trying to provide for us. But, you know, see, Champi, the things weren't happening. So my mom decided to move us in Makai. Like from the city, we just like, okay, city kids. When I got to Makai, which is Kwahlabisa, where I had moved, I lived for 5 years. When I got there, it was the most beautiful place I've ever seen on earth, where you see like, okay, everyone's just living everywhere. There's just animals. Oh, wow. There's pigs. It's a movie, you know? So getting to integrate into society at that time as a mixed baby, I think having to find a school, you know, moving from a white school to a black school, everyone is just running at break time. You're trying to reach out like, yo, you know, everyone wants to know you. And for me, I think that's where I felt a lower primary. Yeah, I think I was 12 years old or something. I get to the school, oh snap, you know, break time. I'm still not seeing anyone light. If you see anyone light, you know, they just don't have the hair you have.
Yeah.
Okay, and I got there, everything was beautiful until it just got to moments where it was just like the small little moments, you know, where it's like, shall we joking is Zulu, you know, Zulu, there's like parables, so, you know, and I know how to Khuluma Zulu, but I didn't know like, you know,
deep.
you know, like, what does that mean? Just like, okay, cool, I don't get it. So I think that's where, for me, I realized there is a bit of a thing about me that's going on that I couldn't understand, you know? And it pull up all these bogus terms, of course. What's my blue? Excel, you know? And it's always, you never see it, you only feel it.
I think the most important thing I'm taking away is like what you guys said about the feeling aspect. How you look is not actually the relevant part. What your parents were is also not really relevant. What's relevant is what you feel. And what I'm picking up, you both say you felt love, and you both say you are Black. And I think that's the most relevant thing. And I'm hoping people that are watching at home can take away from that how a person identifies is more important than how we box them based on how they look.
Precisely.
Do you have any final words that you'd like to share with viewers at home, just based on our discussion today?
Just have an open mind, maybe. That's all I could say.
That's spot on. Short and sweet, I like it. Have an open mind. And your side?
I think it'll be acknowledge your roots, amadlo zakho, abagini. Give credit to your family, to the society, the community, to the African science that's healed our grannies, the medicines. Guys, let's focus on that.
Thank you so much, Graig and Petronella, for this conversation. I think it's enlightening. It's taking us forward, especially because, man, in 100 years, we're all going to look, I would say, like you, which is you can't box you. You literally could be from anywhere And it doesn't even matter. All that matters is what the person is presenting to you. Thank you so much for chatting to us today. Hashtag Unpacked with Relebogile. Share your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining in on our conversations online. Our details are there. Get in touch with us if there's any experiences that you would like to share, or maybe something in our conversation resonated with you. For me, the biggest thing is, men, leave a person to be who they are. And more importantly, be who you need to be, who you want to be, who you are. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night. Next time on Unpacked, 1.9 million followers on TikTok.
It's something that you just wake up and you just do your thing.
We impact people's lives more than we actually do realize.
Now, just talking about it, I haven't dealt with it.
When somebody's looking at you through their phone, they don't see this part of the conversation. Unpacked with Relebogile Mabotja. New episodes weekdays at 5:30 p.m. on my YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Television edited broadcasts weekdays at 5 p.m. Open up to S3.